Hello, my darklings. Welcome home to Fate's gentle hands. Close your eyes. Picture a freezing winter in Chicago. The wind is howling outside a Gothic cathedral. Inside, a girl is trembling in a white lace dress, about to say, "I do" to a man she loathes. Her heart is racing, her hope is gone. But destiny has a strange sense of humor. In the blink of an eye, the organ music stops and the gunfire begins. In this story, the line between savior and captor is blurred by blood. We are about to witness a romance forged in violence and sealed with a stolen vow. Can love bloom in the middle of a mafia war, or will it burn everything to the ground? This is the story of Elena and Dante. It's raw, it's intense, and it starts with a bullet. Take a deep breath, because once we start, there is no turning back. Thump, thump, thump. My heart was not beating. It was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird desperate to break free. The sound was so loud in my ears that I could barely hear the organ music wheezing out a mournful tune. It did not sound like a wedding march. It sounded like a funeral dirge. I stared down at my hands. They were trembling so violently that the cheap bouquet of white lilies was shaking, shedding petals onto the marble floor. The smell of the flowers was suffocating, thick, sweet, cloying. It reminded me of the embalming fluid used in mortuaries. This was a funeral, my funeral. Beside me stood Frankie the pig. The nickname was not just an insult. It was a physical description. He was 60 years old, wide as a barrel, and sweating profusely despite the chill in the cathedral. I could smell him from here. A vile mixture of expensive cologne trying to mask the scent of stale cigars and unwashed skin. He reached out and grabbed my hand. His palm was clammy and wet. My stomach lurched. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. But I stood still, frozen, like a statue carved from ice. "Do you take this man, Frankie Russo, to be your lawfully wedded husband?" the priest asked. His voice was monotone, bored. He wanted this over with. He knew what this was. Everyone in Chicago knew what this was. Frankie squeezed my hand, his thick fingers digging into my skin. A warning. I opened my mouth to speak, but my throat was dry as sandpaper. If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever. Hold your peace. It was just a formality, a script. Who would dare interrupt a capo of the Russo family? My chest tightened. I closed my eyes, accepting my fate. Crash! The sound was not a knock. It was an explosion. The heavy oak doors at the back of the church did not just open. They were kicked in with such force that the wood splintered, sending shards flying across the vestibule like shrapnel. A gust of freezing winter wind howled into the sanctuary, extinguishing the candles lining the aisle. Shadows lengthened. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in a second. I spun around. Frankie spun around. Every head in the pews turned. There, framed by the swirling snow outside, stood a silhouette cut from the darkness itself. He was tall, imposing. He wore a long black coat that billowed around him like smoke. He did not look like a guest. He looked like the Grim Reaper, Dante Moretti. I had never seen him in person, but I knew that face. Everyone knew that face. Sharp jawline, hair as dark as a raven's wing, and eyes. Even from this distance, I could feel them. Cold, predatory, blue as glacial ice. He did not speak. He did not shout. He simply raised his right arm. In his gloved hand was a matte black pistol with a long cylinder attached to the muzzle. A silencer. Frankie let go of my hand. For the first time, I heard the pig make a sound of genuine terror. He fumbled inside his tuxedo jacket, his fat fingers slipping on the silk lining as he tried to reach for his own weapon. Too slow. Foot! It was a soft noise, like a book falling onto a carpet. Next to me, Frankie jerked violently backward. It was as if an invisible sledgehammer had struck him. A small, neat hole appeared in the center of his forehead. For a split second, he just stood there, eyes wide with shock. Then, the back of his head exploded. Warm, wet liquid sprayed across my face. It soaked into the lace of my white veil. It splattered across the bodice of my pristine wedding dress. Red. So much red. Frankie collapsed. He hit the floor with a heavy thud that shook the altar. Screams erupted from the pews. People scrambled over each other, diving under benches. But nobody ran toward us. A dozen men in tactical gear swarmed through the broken doors behind Dante, their weapons raised. They moved with military precision, securing the perimeter, silencing the few guards Frankie had brought. But I did not look at them. I could not take my eyes off him. Dante Moretti began to walk down the aisle. Click, clack, click, clack. His dress shoes echoed on the stone floor. He moved with a terrifying grace, unhurried, calm. He walked past the cowering guests as if they were ghosts. He reached the altar. He did not look at the dead body at my feet. He stepped over Frankie the pig, as if he were stepping over a puddle of dirty water. He stopped directly in front of me. He was massive. He towered over me, blocking out the light, blocking out the cross behind the altar. The smell of gunpowder and metallic blood assaulted my nose, mixing with the sickening scent of lilies. I could not breathe. My lungs had forgotten how to work. He looked down at me. His face was devoid of emotion. No anger, no pity, just a cold, calculating assessment. Raise your head, he commanded. His voice was deep, a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards and into my bones. I was paralyzed. Slowly, he raised his hand, the hand holding the gun. I flinched, waiting for the bullet, waiting to join Frankie on the floor. But the bullet did not come. Instead, he pressed the barrel of the silencer under my chin. The metal was hot, burning hot from the friction of the bullet that had just ended a life. He used the gun to tilt my head up, forcing me to look him in the eye. Frankie is dead, he said. I stared into his eyes. They were mesmerizing and terrifying, like looking into the heart of a storm. My father, I stammered. My voice was a broken whisper. Your father is not here, Dante said. The gun barrel slid down my throat, tracing the line of my esophagus, resting against the hollow of my neck where my pulse was fluttering like a trapped moth. The debt your father owed to this piece of trash, Dante nodded slightly toward the corpse, has not been erased. He leaned in closer. I could feel his breath on my cheek. It smelled of mint and tobacco. The debt has been transferred. To me. Transferred? My mind was spinning. $5 million? Dante murmured. That was the price, was it not? A memory flashed through my mind, sharp and painful as a knife wound. 3 days ago, my father, a man I used to idolize, kneeling on the dirty linoleum of our kitchen floor. He was sobbing, grabbing the hem of my jeans. Elena, please, you have to do this, he begged, snot running down his face. If you do not marry Frankie, they are going to cut me into pieces. They will kill your mother. They will kill you. It is just marriage, Elena. Just a few years. It is $5 million. I cannot pay it. You are the only asset I have left. Asset. That was all I was. Currency. Dante Moretti seemed to read the memory in my eyes. His lips curled into a humorless smile. Frankie wanted you as a trophy, he said softly. But I am a businessman, Elena, and I do not accept cash for a debt this large. He pulled the gun away from my neck and holstered it in one fluid motion. Then, his hand shot out and gripped my upper arm. His fingers were like steel bands. You belong to me now. He did not wait for an answer. He turned and began to drag me down the aisle. Wait! I gasped, stumbling in my heels. My dress was heavy with blood, dragging on the floor. Where are you taking me? Home, he said simply, not breaking his stride. We passed the rows of terrified guests. We passed the priest who was shaking behind the pulpit. We stepped out into the biting cold of the Chicago winter. The wind whipped my hair, stinging my eyes. A massive black-armored SUV was idling at the curb. The engine purred with a deep, menacing growl. A driver stood by the back door, his face impassive. Dante opened the door and shoved me inside. I tumbled onto the leather seat, the smell of new car leather, mixing with the coppery scent of blood on my dress. He climbed in right behind me. The space was too small, too intimate. His thigh brushed against mine. His presence filled the cabin, sucking out all the oxygen. The heavy door slammed shut with a final, echoing thud. The lock clicked. I was trapped. I looked at him, my chest heaving, tears finally spilling over my lashes. Drive, Dante ordered the driver. As the car pulled away from the church, leaving my old life and a cooling corpse behind, Dante turned to look at me one last time. Take that dress off, he said, his voice low and dangerous in the quiet car. It smells like a dead pig. I pressed myself against the window, watching the city blur past. I was no longer a bride. I was not even a person anymore. I was the payment for a debt I never incurred. And the man sitting next to me was not a savior. He was the devil who had come to collect. The car door locks engaged. Click. And just like that, I was cut off from the world of light. Next to me sat a man who had just executed someone without blinking. My heart was beating so hard, I thought it would shatter my ribs. Are you holding your breath? Because I am. If you are listening to this, if you are sitting there in the safety of your room while I am trapped in this armored beast, I need you to do something for me. I need to know I am not alone. Please go to the comment section right now. Tell me the name of the city and country where you are listening from. Let me know that someone, somewhere, is witnessing this. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel, because this car is moving fast and we are heading into the darkness. You do not want to miss what happens when we arrive. The heavy door of the armored SUV slammed shut, sealing us inside a vacuum of silence. The sound was final. Absolute. It was the sound of a prison cell locking. Drive, Dante Moretti commanded. His voice was not loud, yet it filled the small cabin, vibrating with an authority that made the air feel thin. The engine roared to life beneath us, a deep, guttural growl that shuddered through the leather seats and up into my spine. The tires crunched violently over the packed snow as the car peeled away from the curb, leaving the Gothic silhouette of the church fading into the blizzard behind us. I pressed my back against the door, putting as much distance between myself and the man beside me as the cramped space allowed. It was a futile gesture. Dante took up space not just physically, but atmospherically. His presence was like a gravitational pull, dark and overwhelming. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering. The car was warm, but the chill seeped from my bones. I looked down at my dress. The pristine white lace was ruined. Frankie's blood had begun to dry, turning a sickening, rusty brown. It crusted on the fabric, stiff and alien. I rubbed at a spot on my thigh with a trembling thumb, desperate to erase the evidence of the violence I had just witnessed. It did not budge. "Stop that," a voice said. I froze. I turned my head slowly. Dante was watching me. In the shifting shadows of the passing streetlights, his face was a landscape of sharp angles and ruthless lines. He was not looking at my face. He was looking at my hands, scrubbing frantically at the blood. "You are making it worse," he said, his tone bored, detached. I swallowed the lump of terror in my throat. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Thump! 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 "Where?" My voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried again, trying to summon a shred of the courage my father had failed to teach me. "Where are you taking me?" Dante did not answer immediately. He reached into the inner pocket of his black trench coat. I flinched, my eyes widening, expecting another gun, expecting a bullet. Instead, he pulled out a silver Zippo lighter and a pack of cigarettes. Clink, flick, snap! The flame flared, orange and hot in the darkness, illuminating the icy blue of his irises. He lit the cigarette, the paper glowing red, and inhaled deeply. He held the smoke in his lungs for a long moment before turning to me and exhaling. A stream of gray smoke washed over my face. It smelled of expensive tobacco, mint, and something darker. Danger. "Kill me?" He repeated my unspoken fear, a smirk playing on his lips. "Why would I kill you, Elena? You are worth $5 million. Destroying you would be bad business." He leaned back, spreading his legs, his knee brushing against mine. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through me, terrifying and confusing. "You are collateral," he said, the smoke curling around his words. "An asset. Nothing more. Collateral for a debt that isn't mine," I whispered, bitterness warring with fear. "Sins of the father," Dante murmured, looking out the window at the blurred city lights. "They always fall on the children. You should know that by now." I looked toward the front of the car. A thick partition of glass separated us from the driver, but I could see his eyes in the rearview mirror. Enzo! He was a massive wall of muscle, his neck thick as a tree trunk. A jagged white scar ran from his left temple all the way down to his jawline, pulling his lip into a permanent sneer. He drove with one hand, his eyes flicking to the mirror every few seconds. He wasn't watching the road. He was watching me, assessing, guarding, making sure the prisoner didn't try to tuck and roll out of a moving vehicle. The city landscape began to change. The dirty, snow-piled streets of the lower districts gave way to wide, clean avenues. We were climbing up into the hills where the air was cleaner and the money was older. The car slowed as we approached a massive gate made of black iron and steel. It looked less like a driveway entrance and more like the gates to a fortress. Cameras buzzed and turned as we approached. The gates swung open silently. We wound up a long, heated driveway that melted the snow upon contact. At the top stood a structure that defied gravity. Dante's penthouse was not just an apartment, It was a brutalist masterpiece of concrete, glass, and black stone, perched on the edge of a cliff, overlooking the entire glittering sprawl of Chicago. The SUV came to a halt. Enzo was out of the car in a second, opening the door for Dante. Dante stepped out into the swirling snow. He buttoned his coat. Unbothered by the freezing wind, he did not offer me a hand. He simply stood there, waiting. I scrambled out, my heels slipping on the wet pavement. The wind whipped my hair across my face, blinding me. "Inside," Dante ordered. We bypassed the main lobby and entered through a private garage. He led me to a dedicated elevator. The doors slid open, revealing an interior of gold trim and mirrors. As the doors closed, sealing us in, the air became stifling. The elevator was small, too small for a man of his size and a woman with too much fear. I could feel him behind me. He was not touching me, but the heat radiating from his body was palpable. It felt like a physical weight pressing against my back. I could smell him. Sandalwood, the sharp tang of gunpowder, and the metallic scent of blood that wasn't his. My breath hitched. I stared at our reflection in the polished gold doors. I looked like a wreck, hair wild, dress stained, eyes wide and haunted. He looked pristine, untouchable. The devil in a bespoke suit. He shifted his weight. I flinched. "Relax," he murmured, his voice right by my ear. The deep timbre vibrated through my skull. "If I wanted to hurt you, I would have done it in the church." Ding! The doors slid open. We stepped into a living space that spanned the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city below, a sea of diamonds glittering in the cold night. The furniture was sleek, black leather, chrome, and marble. It was beautiful and cold. It felt empty. Dante shrugged off his coat and tossed it carelessly onto a sofa. He loosened his tie with a fluid motion, the first sign of fatigue I had seen. He walked to a wet bar in the corner, the crystal decanters catching the light. He poured an amber liquid into a glass, took a sip, and finally turned to look at me. I was standing by the elevator, hugging myself, dripping melting snow and dried blood onto his expensive slate floor. He stared at me for a long moment. His gaze was heavy, traveling from my eyes down to the stained hem of my dress. It felt like he was stripping me bare, layer by layer. He walked toward me. I took a step back, my heel hitting the wall. Nowhere left to go. He stopped, inches from me. He reached out. I squeezed my eyes shut, but he didn't strike. He grabbed a black silk shirt that was draped over a chair and tossed it at my chest. I caught it reflexively. "Go shower," he commanded. His voice was low, leaving no room for argument. He pointed down a hallway. "Second door on the left." He took another step closer, invading my personal space, until the toes of his Italian leather shoes touched mine. He leaned down, his face inches from mine. I could see the dark flecks in his blue eyes. "Scrub your skin raw if you have to, Elena. Get the smell of that old pig Frankie off of you. Every trace." His voice dropped to a whisper that sent shivers racing down my spine. "If you step out of that bathroom and I can still smell him on you, I will peel your skin off myself." The water was hot, scalding, needles of liquid fire hitting my skin. I stood under the massive rainfall showerhead, steam billowing around me like a white fog. The bathroom was larger than my entire bedroom at home, clad in black marble and gold fixtures. It screamed wealth. It screamed power. I scrubbed. I used a rough loofah and scrubbed my arms until the skin turned an angry, raw red. I scrubbed my chest, my neck, my thighs. I watched the water swirling down the drain. At first, it was pink, tinged with Frankie's blood. Then it ran clear, but I still felt dirty. I felt the phantom sensation of Frankie's sweaty hand on mine. I felt the ghost of his breath on my face. And then I felt something else. The memory of Dante's gun under my chin, the heat of his body in the elevator. I sank to the floor of the shower, pulling my knees to my chest. A sob ripped through my throat, raw and painful. Then another. I cried until my chest ached, the sound of my grief drowned out by the roaring water. I was 22 years old. I was supposed to be in art school. I was supposed to have a future. Instead, I was a prisoner in a castle in the sky. 20 minutes later, the water ran cold. I turned it off. I stepped out, shivering, and dried myself with a towel that was softer than anything I had ever touched. I picked up the shirt Dante had thrown at me. It was black silk. I slipped it on. It was massive on my frame. The shoulder seams hung halfway down my arms, and the hem fell to my mid-thighs. I brought the collar up to my nose. It smelled like him. Cedar wood, smoke, and something distinctly masculine. Putting it on felt like being wrapped in his shadow. I stepped out of the bathroom. The bedroom was dimly lit. The only light came from the city glow outside the massive windows. I scanned the room, desperate for a way out. A phone? I rushed to the bedside table. The cord of the landline had been cut. Of course, my eyes darted to a heavy mahogany desk in the corner. There, lying next to a stack of legal documents, a silver box cutter. My heart slammed against my ribs. I moved silently across the plush carpet. My bare feet made no sound. I reached out, my fingers wrapped around the cold metal handle. I slid the blade out. Click. It was sharp, deadly. I turned around. Dante was there. He was sitting in a high-backed leather wing chair by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He was watching me. He had been watching me the whole time. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look scared. He looked amused. He took a slow sip of his whiskey, the ice clinking against the glass. "Come here," he said. It wasn't a question. I tightened my grip on the cutter. My hand was shaking. I'm not afraid of you," I lied. My voice was thin, brittle. "Then show me," he challenged, setting the glass down. I lunged. It was a foolish, desperate, amateur move. I ran at him, the blade raised. Dante moved with a speed that blurred the air. He didn't even stand up fully. He simply caught my wrist in midair. His grip was like a steel trap, crushing the delicate bones of my wrist. "Ah!" I gasped. With a simple twist, he spun me around. He pulled me back against his chest, hard. His other arm wrapped around my waist, pinning me against him. He slammed my knife hand down onto the desk, forcing my fingers to open. The box cutter clattered onto the wood. He didn't let go. He held me there, trapped between his hard body and the desk. I could feel every inch of him, the wall of muscle that was his chest against my back, the rapid, powerful beat of his heart, the heat of his thighs. He leaned forward, burying his face in the crook of my neck. I froze, expecting him to bite. to hurt. Instead, he inhaled deeply. Better, he murmured against my skin. Now you smell like me. He shifted his grip, not letting me go, but turning me slightly so I had to look at him. His lips grazed the sensitive skin behind my ear. Nice attempt with the knife, Elena, he whispered. The vibration of his voice traveled down my spine, making my knees weak. But next time, aim for the throat. The chest is too protected. He released me abruptly. I stumbled forward, grabbing the edge of the desk for support. Sit! He pointed to the chair opposite him. I sat. I had no fight left. He picked up a manila folder from the desk and tossed it into my lap. Your father has vanished, Dante said, his voice returning to the cold, businesslike tone. He took the chaos at the church as an opportunity. He is gone, likely halfway to Mexico by now. A pang of betrayal pierced my chest. He left me. Again. So, Dante continued, Frankie is dead. His territory, the docks, the loans, the gambling dens, is up for grabs. The Vitti family is already circling like vultures. I need to claim it before they do. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. That is where you come in. Me? I whispered. You were Frankie's fiancé. By the archaic laws of our world, you are the link. If I marry you, I have a legitimate claim to absorb his assets to protect his widow. Marry you? The words tasted like ash. A fake engagement, he corrected. You will wear my ring. You will stand by my side. You will smile for the cameras and the other dons. You will be the devoted, grieving, then comforted woman. And if I refuse? Then I throw you out on the street, he said simply. And the Vitti family will find you within the hour. They won't be as polite as I am. A knock on the door made me jump. An older woman entered, pushing a silver food cart. She had steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and a face etched with lines of hardship. Maria. Dante acknowledged her with a nod. Maria set a bowl of steaming soup and fresh bread on the table. As she poured water into a crystal glass, she leaned in close to me. Dante had turned away to pour himself another drink. Eat, child, Maria whispered, her voice rough like sandpaper. Her eyes held a flicker of pity. And do whatever he says. Don't provoke the dawn. The girls before you. She trailed off, glancing fearfully at Dante's back. None of them lasted a week. She straightened up and hurried out of the room before I could ask what happened to them. The silence returned, heavier than before. Dante stood up and walked to a closet. He pulled out a garment bag and unzipped it. Inside was a dress, velvet, deep, dark red, the color of arterial blood. Put this on, he ordered. Where are we going? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. To a gala, he said, buttoning his suit jacket. Tonight, I introduce you to the underworld. And remember, Elena. He paused at the door, looking back at me with those glacial eyes. Tonight, you are the Queen of Chicago. Do not embarrass me. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was an assault on the senses. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars dripped from the ceiling, casting a fractured golden light over the crowd. The air was thick, perfumed with expensive flowers, roasting meat, and the undercurrent of danger. A live jazz band played in the corner, the saxophone wailing a mournful tune that was lost under the roar of conversation. I walked in on Dante's arm. The burgundy velvet dress fit like a second skin. It was strapless, exposing my neck and shoulders with a slit that ran dangerously high up my left thigh. I felt naked, exposed. Every head turned as we entered. The conversation died instantly. It was like dropping a stone into a still pond. The ripples of silence spread outward from us. I felt the weight of hundreds of eyes. Men looked at me with hungry, predatory stares, undressing me with their gaze. Women looked at me with cold calculation, assessing the new threat. "Is that her?" I heard a whisper. "Frankie's girl, the one from the wedding massacre." "Look at her now. Moretti has her on a leash." Dante's hand tightened on the small of my back. His touch was burning hot through the velvet. He pulled me closer, his hip bumping against mine. It wasn't a gesture of affection. It was a brand, a statement. She is mine. He navigated the crowd like a shark, swimming through a school of fish. People parted for him, bowing their heads in respect or fear. We reached the bar. Dante leaned down, his lips brushing my ear. "Stay here," he ordered. "Do not leave Enzo's sight. I have business to discuss with the commission." He nodded toward a shadow in the corner. Enzo was there, arms crossed, his scarred face impassive. Dante disappeared into a cloud of cigar smoke. I was alone. I ordered a glass of water, my hand trembling as I lifted it to my lips. "Well, well, look what the cat dragged in." The voice was slurred, oily. I stiffened. I turned slowly. Leaning against the bar was a young man. He was wearing a checkered suit that was too loud, too bright. His face was handsome but ruined by dissipation. Bloodshot eyes, dark circles, a sneer of entitlement. Luca Vitti, the son of Salvatore Vitti, the head of the rival family. He looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on the slit of my dress. He licked his lips. It was disgusting. "So, you are the clearance sale item Dante picked up?" Luca laughed, the smell of stale whiskey rolling off him in waves. "I heard Frankie didn't even get to unwrap the package before he got popped. What a waste of good meat." My stomach turned. "Leave me alone," I said, turning my back on him. "Don't be shy, sweetheart," Luca said. He reached out and grabbed my arm. His grip was wet and weak compared to Dante's, but it made my skin crawl. "Let's see if you are worth $5 million. Maybe I'll make Dante an offer." "Let go!" I hissed, trying to pull away. He didn't let go. He yanked me hard. "Come on! Let's go to the bathroom. I want a private viewing." He began to drag me toward the dark corridor leading to the restrooms. I looked around frantically for Enzo, but a sudden surge of waiters carrying trays had blocked his line of sight. "No!" I screamed, but the jazz music swallowed my voice. Luca shoved me into the dimly lit hallway. He pushed me against the floral wallpaper, his body pressing against mine. His hands fumbled at the bodice of my dress. Panic exploded in my brain. Fight. I raised my hand and clawed at his face. My nails dug deep into his cheek, ripping down. "You bitch!" Luca howled, stumbling back. 4 lines of bright red blood welled up on his face. He raised his hand, his face twisting into a mask of fury. "I'll kill you!" He swung. I flinched, waiting for the impact. It never came. A shadow fell over us. A hand, large and gloved in black leather, caught Luca's wrist in mid-air. Luca looked up. His eyes went wide with terror. Dante was there. He didn't say a word. He didn't look angry. He looked like the apocalypse. With a single, brutal motion, Dante twisted Luca's arm. There was a sickening snap. Luca screamed, a high-pitched, gurgling sound. Dante didn't stop. He grabbed a handful of Luca's greasy hair and slammed his face down onto the marble countertop of a nearby decorative table. Crack! Blood sprayed across the mirror. Luca slid to the floor, moaning, clutching his broken nose. Dante reached into his jacket. He pulled out a revolver, a massive, chrome-plated hand cannon. He stepped over Luca, grabbed him by the throat, and hauled him up against the wall. He jammed the barrel of the gun into Luca's temple. The music in the ballroom seemed to stop. The silence in the hallway was absolute. Dante turned his head slowly to look at me. I was pressed against the wall, chest heaving, clutching my torn dress. "Look closely, Elena," Dante said. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. He cocked the hammer of the gun. Click. This is the price of touching what belongs to me. He pressed the gun harder, making Luca whimper. In that moment, staring at the violence, staring at the monster who was ready to execute a man in a crowded hotel just for touching me, I realized something twisted, something wrong. I wasn't afraid of him. For the first time since this nightmare began, standing in the shadow of a killer, I felt safe. He was a monster, yes, but he was my monster. I looked at his finger on the trigger. I looked at his eyes, burning with a dark, possessive fire that was meant only for me. My heart wasn't racing from fear anymore. It was racing from something else. Adrenaline, power, that moment. Seeing the demon unleash his wrath for me, it shifted everything. Do you like how Dante protects what is his? Or do you think he is too cruel? If you are still with me, if your heart is pounding as fast as mine, leave a comment below right now. Tell me, cruel or protector? And hit that like button if you want to see exactly how Dante punishes those who dare to touch his wife. Do not go anywhere. The next shot will decide the fate of the night. The silence in the armored SUV was heavier than the steel doors locking us in. It wasn't the empty silence of a library. It was the suffocating, thick silence that comes after a bomb goes off. Dante sat beside me, staring out of the window at the blurred city lights. He looked completely unaffected. He had just crushed a man's face into a marble counter, snapped a bone like a dry twig, and threatened to execute him in a hallway. Yet, his breathing was even. His posture was relaxed. But I saw the truth. His right hand, the hand that had delivered justice or cruelty, depending on how you looked at it, was resting on his knee. The knuckles were split. Blood, dark and sluggish, was oozing from a gash across his palm, where the mirror shards must have cut him. He was bleeding because of me. The car rolled to a stop inside the private garage of the penthouse. We took the elevator up in that same oppressive silence. When the doors opened, Dante walked straight for the liquor cabinet. He didn't even take off his coat. "Your hand," I said. My voice sounded small in the cavernous room. He glanced at it, as if noticing the injury for the first time. "It is nothing. Go to bed, Elena." He reached for the decanter. "No," I said. He froze. He turned slowly, his eyebrows raised in a mix of amusement and warning. "No," I said. "No." I walked toward him. My legs were shaking, but I forced them to move. I stopped right in front of him. I reached out and took the whiskey glass from his uninjured hand and set it down on the table with a sharp clack. "You are hurt. Sit down." Dante stared at me. For a second, I thought he might strangle me. Then, a flicker of something unreadable passed through his eyes. He sat on the black leather sofa, leaning back, spreading his arms along the top of the cushions. He watched me like a lion watching a mouse that had decided to be brave. I ran to the bathroom, grabbed the first aid kit I had seen earlier under the sink, and rushed back. I knelt between his legs. The position was submissive, intimate. I tried to ignore the heat radiating from his thighs. "Give me your hand," I whispered. He extended his bleeding hand. I soaked a cotton ball in antiseptic. "This will sting," I warned. "I have felt worse," he said dryly. I cleaned the wound. He didn't flinch. Not a muscle twitched. I wrapped the gauze around his palm, my fingers brushing against his callous skin. His hands were rough, dangerous, yet they were warm. "You need to take the coat off," I said, looking up. "There is blood on the sleeve." He stood up and shrugged off the heavy trench coat. Then he undid his tie. He began to unbutton his white dress shirt. One button, two buttons. He pulled the shirt off his shoulders and tossed it aside. I gasped. The sound was involuntary, ripped from my throat before I could stop it. I dropped the roll of gauze. Dante's chest was muscular, sculpted like a Roman god. But it was his back and his sides that made my stomach turn over. Scars, hundreds of them. There were long, raised welts that crisscrossed his skin like a road map of pain. Whip marks. There were round, puckered burn marks that looked like they came from cigars. There were jagged lines that could only be from knives. He wasn't just a powerful Don. He was a survivor. I realized then that Dante Moretti hadn't been born a monster. He had been carved into one. Without thinking, I reached out. My fingertips, cold and trembling, ghosted over a particularly vicious scar that ran from his ribs to his hip bone. Dante flinched. His muscles contracted under my touch. A sharp intake of breath hissed through his teeth. I snatched my hand back. I'm sorry." He grabbed my wrist. His grip was not painful, but it was inescapable. He pulled me closer until I was kneeling directly against the fabric of his trousers. "Do they disgust you?" he asked. His voice was rough, vulnerable in a way I had never heard. "No," I whispered, looking up into his stormy blue eyes. "They make me wonder how you are still standing." Pain is a good teacher, Elena. It teaches you what is real. He leaned down. His face was inches from mine. I could feel his breath on my lips. My heart began to race, not from fear, but from a sudden, overwhelming, magnetic pull. I wanted him to kiss me. God help me. I wanted the monster to kiss me. His eyes dropped to my lips. His head tilted. "Ring!" The shrill sound of a cell phone shattered the moment like a hammer through glass. Dante pulled back instantly. The vulnerability vanished behind a mask of ice. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He looked at the screen, and his expression darkened. He pressed answer and hit the speaker button. He tossed the phone onto the coffee table between us. "Speak," Dante commanded. "Don Moretti!" A voice chirped from the speaker. It was loud, cheerful, sickeningly familiar. My blood ran cold. It was my father. "I heard the news," my father said, his voice trembling with excitement. "My God, the plan worked perfectly, didn't it?
I heard Frankie got popped right at the altar, and now the girl is with you? Genius! Absolute genius! I stared at the phone. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The debt is cleared, right? My father continued, oblivious to the silence. Frankie is dead, so I don't owe him. And you have the girl, so you have the territory claim. We are square, but about the bonus we discussed. You know, for setting her up? For making sure she was at the church? My heart stopped. Setting me up? When can you wire the rest of the funds? My father asked greedily. Mexico is expensive, you know. Dante looked at me. He didn't say a word. He just watched the realization destroy me. Elena is sitting right here, Dante said calmly into the phone. There was a pause, a long, suffocating silence on the other end. Oh, my father said. His tone didn't sound guilty. It sounded annoyed. Well, tell her it's for the best. She was always too soft. At least now she's useful. Click. Dante ended the call. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was dead. I looked at the bandages on the floor. I looked at the man with the scars. And then I felt something inside me break. Welcome to the real world, Elena, Dante said, his voice devoid of pity. A world where even your own father sells you to the butcher to cover a bet. Part 6. The Puppet with Cut Strings. I didn't scream. I think Dante expected me to scream. Or faint. Or throw something. Instead, a laugh bubbled up from my throat. It was a dry, scratching sound. Then another. I started laughing, but tears were streaming down my face. I laughed until my ribs ached, until I couldn't breathe. It was the sound of a mind snapping. My father hadn't just run away. He hadn't just abandoned me. He had sold me. Twice. Once to Frankie and once to Dante. I wasn't a daughter. I was a broodmare, a bargaining chip, a check to be cashed. Elena, Dante said, stepping toward me. Don't! I scrambled backward, crab walking away from him until my back hit the sofa. Don't come near me! I stood up, swaying on my feet. The room was spinning. I have to go, I mumbled. I can't be here. I can't be currency. I turned and ran for the door. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have shoes on. I just needed to run. I made it 3 steps before Dante was there. He moved faster than a shadow. He didn't grab me. He simply slammed his hand against the heavy wooden door, holding it shut. He turned the deadbolt with a decisive click. Get out of my way! I screamed, hammering my fists against his bare chest. I hit his scars. I hit his muscles. It was like hitting a wall of concrete. Open the door. Let me go. I hate you. You are all the same. I clawed at him. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted him to feel a fraction of the pain ripping me apart. He took it. He stood there and let me hit him. You are just another buyer! I sobbed, my punches losing their strength. I am just a whore to all of you, aren't I? Just a thing to be traded. Dante caught my wrists. He didn't squeeze. He just held them firm, stopping my assault. Look at me, he commanded. No. He pinned my wrist to the door above my head with one hand. With his other hand, he grabbed my jaw, forcing my face up. I said, look at me! He roared. I froze. I stared into his eyes. They were burning with a blue fire. Yes, you are an asset, he hissed. his face inches from mine. You are the most expensive thing I have ever acquired. And do you know what I do with my expensive things, Elena? I keep them. I protect them. I kill for them. He released my jaw and leaned back slightly, his expression shifting from anger to something grim. Do you think I bought you for fun? Do you think I walked into that church because I needed a wife? He laughed, a dark, humorless sound. I knew about your father's deal with Frankie for months. I knew Frankie planned to use you for a week, break you in, and then sell you to a brothel in Thailand to recover the rest of the debt. Frankie didn't want a wife, Elna. He wanted a product. My knees gave out. Thailand, a brothel. Dante held me up by my wrists, keeping me from collapsing. I stepped in, he continued, his voice lowering to a growl. I paid your father double what Frankie offered to ensure he kept his mouth shut until the wedding. I took the debt. I took you, not to use you, but to keep you out of a cage. He let go of my wrists. I slid down the door until I hit the floor. You are a monster, I whispered. But there was no heat in it. I am, he agreed. He walked over to where his holster lay on the table. He pulled out his gun. My breath hitched. He walked back to me. He crouched down. He reversed the gun, holding the barrel, and extended the handle toward me. If you want to leave, Elena, there is only one way. I don't let people walk out of this penthouse alive. It's a security risk. He pressed the handle of the gun into my trembling hand. Take it! I wrapped my fingers around the cold steel. It was heavy, much heavier than I expected. He grabbed my hand and guided it. He pressed the muzzle of the gun directly against the left side of his chest. Right over his heart, I could feel the steady thump, thump, thump of his heartbeat through the metal. Shoot me, he said softly. What? I gasped. If I am the villain, bring me down. Pull the trigger. The safety is off. One squeeze, and I'm dead. You can take the keys, take the money in the safe, and run. You will be free. His eyes held mine. He wasn't bluffing. He was giving me the ultimate power. His life was in my hands. But if you don't shoot, he whispered, leaning his forehead against mine, if you lower this gun, then you are mine. Body and soul. No more running, no more doubts. You belong to me, and I will burn the world down before I let anyone touch you again. My finger hovered over the trigger. I looked at the man who had bought me, the man who had saved me, the man who was willing to die to prove a point. My hand shook. 3 seconds, Elena, he taunted. 1. I tightened my grip. 2. I looked at his scars. 3. Clatter. The gun slipped from my fingers and hit the hardwood floor. I couldn't do it. I collapsed forward, burying my face in the crook of his neck, sobbing uncontrollably. I wrapped my arms around his bare torso, clinging to him like a lifeline. I hate you. I wept into his skin. I know, Dante murmured. His arms came around me, enveloping me, shielding me. He lifted me up effortlessly, as if I weighed nothing. He carried me out of the living room, down the hall to the master bedroom. He didn't take me to the bed to ravage me. He laid me down on the silk sheets gently. He went into the bathroom and returned with a warm, damp cloth. He sat on the edge of the bed and wiped the tear tracks from my face. He wiped the dried blood from my arm. His touch was clinical, yet oddly tender. Sleep, he ordered, pulling the duvet up to my chin. We will figure out the rest tomorrow. I closed my eyes, exhausted. I felt safe. For the first time in forever, I felt safe. Crash! The sound of shattering glass tore through the room. Dante was on his feet instantly, a second gun appearing in his hand as if by magic. Get down! He roared. Rat tat 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 tat. Bullets sprayed the room, shredding the curtains, tearing into the plaster of the walls. We are under attack! Dante shouted. He grabbed my arm and yanked me off the bed, dragging me onto the floor. Stay low! He crawled to the window and fired 2 shots, blindly into the night. Who is it? I screamed, covering my ears. The Vitti family, Dante snarled. Retaliation for what I did to Luca. They must have bypassed the gate security. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Enzo says the front entrance is compromised. They are coming up the elevator. He looked at me. His eyes were wild, fueled by adrenaline. We have to move, now. He grabbed a leather jacket from the closet and threw it at me. Put it on. It's going to be cold. He pulled me out of the bedroom, keeping me pressed against his back. We didn't go to the elevator. We ran to the back of the penthouse, to a service stairwell. We sprinted down 10 flights of stairs to the underground garage. The SUV is too big, a slow target, Dante muttered. He pulled a tarp off a machine in the corner. It was a motorcycle, a matte black Ducati, sleek and deadly. Get on! He ordered, swinging his leg over the seat. I climbed on behind him. I've never been on a motorcycle. Hold on to me, he said, starting the engine. It roared to life, echoing in the concrete bunker. Wrap your arms around my waist, tight, and whatever you do, do not let go. I wrapped my arms around him, pressing my chest against his back. I buried my face in his jacket. The garage door opened. We shot out into the night like a bullet. The snowstorm had turned into a blizzard. The wind screamed in my ears, biting at my exposed skin. I squeezed my eyes shut. I could feel Dante's body tensing as he navigated the slick, icy roads. Behind us, I heard tires screeching. Headlights cut through the snow. They were chasing us. Dante swerved, taking a sharp turn onto a narrow mountain path. The bike fishtailed on the ice, and I screamed, tightening my grip until my fingers ached. He corrected it with terrifying skill. We drove for what felt like hours. The city lights faded behind us, replaced by the crushing darkness of the forest. The cold was seeping through the leather jacket, numbing my fingers and toes. Finally, Dante slowed down. We turned onto a dirt track that was barely visible under the snow. A small wooden cabin appeared in the clearing, dark and abandoned. A safe house. Dante killed the engine. The silence of the forest rushed back in. We practically fell off the bike. My legs were numb. I stumbled, and Dante caught me. He kicked the door open. Inside, it was freezing. Check the fireplace, he ordered, locking the door and shoving a heavy dresser in front of it. There should be wood. I fumbled in the dark, finding logs and matches. My hands were shaking so badly, it took me 3 tries to strike the match. Finally, a fire crackled to life. The orange glow illuminated the small, dusty room. There was a single bed in the corner with a thin mattress. Dante stood by the window, peering out into the storm through a crack in the shutters. He turned to me. He was shivering. I realized he was only wearing his dress trousers and a thin undershirt. He had given me his jacket. You are freezing, I said. I'm fine, he gritted out, his teeth chattering. You are turning blue, Dante. He looked at me. His eyes were dark pools. He walked over to the fire. Our clothes are wet, he said. Wet clothes draw heat away from the body. Hypothermia will set in within 20 minutes if we don't dry off. He looked at me, and the air in the room suddenly became hotter than the fire. Take them off, Elena! I swallowed. I slowly unzipped the leather jacket. I peeled off the damp silk shirt beneath. I stood there in my lace bra and panties, the firelight dancing on my skin. Dante watched me. His gaze wasn't cold anymore. It was starving. He unbuttoned his trousers. He peeled off his wet undershirt. He stepped toward me. We were both half naked, shivering, standing in a dusty cabin in the middle of nowhere while killers hunted us. We need to conserve body heat, he whispered. It was a logical excuse, a lie we both wanted to believe. He pulled me onto the narrow bed. He pulled the dusty wool blanket over us. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling my back against his chest. Skin on skin. Fire on fire. Come here, Elena. He breathed against my neck, his hand sliding possessively over my stomach. Let me warm you up. The boundaries between hatred and desire melted away like the snow on our boots. In that cabin, isolated from the world, I realized I had given him more than just my freedom. I had given him my sanity. That night, in the eye of the storm, the line between hate and love didn't just blur, it vanished. In that wooden cabin amidst the blizzard, the boundary between hatred and love completely melted away. I handed him not just my body, but my shattered trust. If you are still listening, please help me by commenting the keyword Destiny Night below, so I know there are still companions walking with me on this journey. Your presence is the greatest motivation for me to continue telling you what happens when the sun comes up. The morning sun filtered through the dusty cracks of the wooden cabin, painting stripes of gold across the rough floorboards. I blinked my eyes open, disoriented for a moment. The storm outside had passed. The howling wind was gone, replaced by a silence so profound it felt holy. I was warm. I was curled against a wall of solid muscle. Dante's arm was draped over my waist, heavy and possessive, pinning me to the narrow mattress. His breathing was slow, rhythmic, a steady anchor in a world that had tried to drown me. I pressed my ear against his chest, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart. For a few fleeting minutes, I allowed myself to pretend. To pretend we were just two people hiding from the winter, not a Mafia Don and his purchased bride running from a death squad. But peace, in our world, is just a reloading phase. The sound of an engine shattering the silence made Dante stiffen instantly. Before I could even gasp, he was up, moving with the lethal grace of a predator. He shoved me behind him, the gun appearing in his hand as if summoned from the air. "Stay down!" he commanded, his voice rough with sleep but sharp with danger. A heavy fist pounded on the cabin door. "Don Moretti, it is Enzo, open up!" Dante lowered the gun but didn't holster it. He moved the heavy dresser aside and threw the bolt. Enzo stumbled in. The giant of a man looked exhausted. His coat was torn, and there was dried blood on his temple. "We secured the perimeter," Enzo panted, his breath clouding in the cold air. "The VT squad is dead, but we have a problem." Dante's eyes narrowed. "Speak." Enzo glanced at me, his expression grim. He pulled a tablet from his inside pocket and handed it to Dante. "Salvatore Vitti sent this an hour ago. It is encrypted, sent directly to your private server. Dante watched the screen. His jaw tightened until I thought his teeth would shatter. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. What is it? I asked, stepping out from the shadows. Dante tried to turn the screen away. Nothing. Get dressed. We are leaving. Let me see, I insisted, adrenaline spiking in my veins. I lunged forward and grabbed the tablet before he could stop me. I wish I hadn't. The video was shaky. It was filmed in a damp, dark room. In the center of the frame, tied to a wooden chair, was a man. His face was bruised, swollen, purple and black. Blood dripped from a cut on his lip. "Daddy!" I screamed, my hands flying to my mouth. A voice from behind the camera laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound like sandpaper on bone. Salvatore Vitti. "Hello, Elena," the voice on the recording sneered. "I heard you're enjoying your honeymoon. Shame you forgot about your old man." The camera zoomed in. My father looked terrified. He was weeping, snot and blood mixing on his face. "Please," my father sobbed into the lens. "Elena, tell him to give you back. They are going to cut off my fingers. Elena, save me." Salvatore stepped into the frame. He was an old man, with skin like leather and eyes like a dead fish. He held a pair of rusty garden shears. "You have until midnight," Salvatore said. "Bring the girl to the old shipyards, alone, unarmed. You give me the girl, I give you the father. If I see one of your men, Dante, I will start pruning this family tree, branch by branch." Click. The screen went black. I dropped the tablet. It hit the floor with a dull thud. "I have to go," I whispered. My whole body was shaking. "I have to save him." "No," Dante said. His voice was a whip crack. "He is my father, Dante. Did you see the shears? They are going to torture him." "It is a trap, Elena." Dante grabbed my shoulders, shaking me hard. "Salvatore Vitti does not make deals. He kills. If you go there, he will kill your father, and then he will keep you for his son to play with." "I don't care," I screamed, pushing him away. "I can't let him die. He is the only family I have left." "He sold you," Dante roared, his patience snapping. "He sold you to Frankie. He sold you to me. He does not deserve your loyalty." "He is my blood," I sobbed. "You don't understand. You don't have a heart." Dante's face shut down. The mask of the dawn slid back into place. Cold, impenetrable. "Enzo," Dante ordered. "Take her back to the headquarters. Lock her in the panic room. Put 2 guards on the door. She does not leave, under any circumstances." "No!" I tried to run, but Enzo grabbed me easily. "I am going to end this," Dante said, checking the magazine of his gun. "I will go to the shipyards. I will burn Salvatore to the ground. And if your father is still breathing when the smoke clears, I will bring him back. But you stay put." 3 hours later, I was pacing the floor of the panic room like a caged tiger. The walls were reinforced steel. There was no way out. My mind was playing the video on a loop. My father's screams, the rusty shears. Knock, knock. The heavy steel door creaked open. It wasn't Enzo. It was a young guard I didn't recognize. He looked nervous. "Miss Ricci?" he whispered. "The Don, he is walking into an ambush. Vitti has the place rigged with explosives. If Dante goes in there shooting, they will all die." My heart stopped. How do you know? I have ears, the guard said. Look, I owe Dante my life, but this is suicide. The only way to save everyone is to give Vitti what he wants. A trade. He held out a set of car keys. There is a sedan in the back alley. I can get you out. I looked at the keys. I knew this was insane. I knew Dante would be furious. But if Dante died because of me, I wouldn't survive it. Take me to the car, I said. I drove through the city like a madwoman. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight, my knuckles were white. The snow was falling again, covering Chicago in a shroud of white. I reached the shipyards. The rusting skeletons of old cranes loomed in the fog like monsters. I stepped out of the car, raising my hands. I am here! I screamed into the darkness. Salvatore, I am here! Let him go! Floodlights blinded me. Salvatore Vitti stepped out from behind a shipping container. He was flanked by 6 armed men. He was smiling. A cruel, toothless smile. Right on time, little princess. Where is he? I demanded. Where is my father? Salvatore snapped his fingers. A door to a container opened. My father walked out. I froze. He wasn't tied up. He wasn't bleeding. The bruises on his face? Up close, under the harsh lights. They looked like makeup. He was holding a glass of brandy in one hand and a cigar in the other. Dad, I whispered. He refused to look me in the eye. He looked at his shoes. I'm sorry, Elena. Salvatore laughed. It was a booming sound that echoed off the metal containers. You see, my dear. Salvatore sneered, walking over to put an arm around my father's shoulder. Your father is a very smart businessman. He called me yesterday. He said Dante was too stingy. He said if I paid off his gambling debts and gave him a ticket to Rio, he would deliver you to me. The video? I choked out. Special effects. Salvatore winked. Hollywood stuff. I looked at my father, the man who raised me, the man who tucked me in at night. You helped them? My voice broke. It's a lot of money, Elena, my father mumbled, taking a sip of brandy. And Dante, he's dangerous. You're better off here. Better off, I screamed. With the people who want to kill me? Grab her, Salvatore ordered. Before I could run, something hard hit the back of my head. The world exploded into white stars, then faded to black. I woke up to the smell of rust and stale urine. My head was throbbing like a drum. I tried to move, but my hands were zip-tied to a metal chair. I was in the center of a massive, abandoned warehouse. High above, rain hammered against the corrugated metal roof. She is awake, a voice drawled. I blinked my eyes into focus. Luca Vitti was sitting on a crate in front of me. His nose was bandaged, and his arm was in a sling, courtesy of Dante. He was holding a knife, twirling it between his fingers. Finally, Luca smiled, and it was the ugliest thing I had ever seen. I have been waiting to finish what we started in that hallway. Behind him, Salvatore was sitting at a folding table, drinking wine. And in the corner, my father was sitting on the floor, frantically stuffing bundles of cash into a duffel bag. He looked like a rat scurrying over garbage. Where is Dante? I croaked. My throat was dry as dust. Dante? Salvatore laughed. He is probably still searching the west side. We sent him on a wild goose chase. By the time he finds you, you will be in pieces, and we will be halfway to Italy. Luca stood up and walked toward me. He ran the flat of the cold blade down my cheek. Dante broke my arm, Luca whispered. So I am going to break every pretty bone in your body. Starting with boom! The massive steel doors of the warehouse didn't open. They disintegrated. An explosion ripped through the entrance, sending a fireball rolling across the concrete floor. The shock wave knocked Luca off his feet. Smoke billowed in, thick and black. Through the haze, a figure emerged. He walked calmly, stepping through the flames. He held a fully automatic assault rifle in each hand. He wasn't wearing body armor. He was wearing a black suit, pristine and terrifying. Dante, kill him! Salvatore screamed, overturning the table for cover. 6 guards opened fire. Dante moved. He didn't run. He flowed. He slid across the floor, firing both weapons with surgical precision. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat. 2 guards dropped instantly, red mist spraying from their heads. Dante rolled behind a concrete pillar, reloaded in a split second, and popped out. Bang! Bang! 2 more fell. He was not a man anymore. He was the Grim Reaper. He was a force of nature. His face was a mask of cold, concentrated rage. He tossed the empty rifles aside and pulled his hand, cannons, the twin chrome revolvers, from his holster. He walked into the open, ignoring the bullets whizzing past him. He shot the 5th guard in the chest. He shot the 6th guard in the throat. Silence fell over the warehouse, broken only by the groans of the dying and the crackle of fire. Dante stood in the center of the carnage. He looked at Luca, who was scrambling backward on the floor, wetting his pants. You, Dante said. One word. It sounded like a death sentence. Dad, help me! Luca screamed. Salvatore popped up from behind the table. He grabbed me. He yanked me back, chair and all, and pressed a jagged knife to my throat. Drop the guns, Moretti! Salvatore shrieked. Drop them or I slit her throat! Dante froze. His eyes locked onto mine. They were wild, dilated, terrifying. Let her go, Salvatore, Dante said, his voice eerily calm. And I will let you die quickly. Drop them! Salvatore pressed the knife harder. I felt a sting as the skin broke. A warm trickle of blood ran down my neck. Dante slowly lowered the guns to the floor. He kicked them away. Good, Salvatore sneered. Now kneel. I want to see the great Dante Moretti beg. Dante sank to his knees. He did it for me. The man who bowed to no one was kneeling in the dirt for me. Salvatore laughed, triumphant. He looked over at Luca. Shoot him, son! Shoot him in the head! Luca fumbled for his gun with his good hand. Salvatore was distracted. He was watching Dante. His grip on the knife loosened just a fraction. It was now or never. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I channeled every ounce of rage I had. Rage at my father, rage at the world, rage at being a victim. I threw my head back, slamming my skull into Salvatore's nose. Crunch! He howled in pain. I whipped my head forward and sank my teeth into his forearm. I bit down hard. I tasted copper. I felt flesh tear. Ah, you bitch! Salvatore screamed, dropping the knife. Dante was moving before the knife hit the ground. He pulled a hidden knife from his boot and threw it. It spun through the air, a blur of silver. Thwack! It embedded itself deep into Luca's chest. Luca gasped, looked down at the handle protruding from his heart, and slumped over. Dead. Dante lunged forward, tackling Salvatore. He didn't use a weapon. He used his fists. He pounded Salvatore's face again and again and again until there was nothing left but a ruin of bone and blood. I sat there, panting, watching the violence. I should have been horrified, but I wasn't. I was relieved. Dante stood up. He was covered in blood. He walked over to me and sliced the zip ties with Salvatore's knife. I fell into his arms. He held me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. He buried his face in my hair, inhaling sharply. "I thought I lost you," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I thought I was too late." A scuffling sound from the corner made us turn. My father, he was trying to sneak out the back door, dragging the heavy duffel bag of money. Dante stepped away from me. He picked up one of his revolvers from the floor. He walked toward my father. "Wait!" My father squealed, dropping the bag. He fell to his knees, clasping his hands. "Dante, sir, it was a mistake. They forced me. I had to do it." Dante didn't stop. He stopped 2 feet away from the pathetic man. He raised the gun. He pointed it right between my father's eyes. "Elena!" my father screamed, looking at me. "Tell him I'm your father. I changed your diapers. Please, don't let him kill me." I looked at him. I looked at the bag of money he had tried to save instead of me. Dante paused. He didn't look at my father. He looked at me. "Elena," he said, his voice soft. "Do you want to save him?" I looked at the gun. I looked at the man who gave me life and the man who saved my life. "Dante, don't!" I shouted. Dante turned to me, his face splashed with blood, his eyes cold as the grave. "You want to save him? After everything?" The room went silent. The only sound was the dripping of rain. I took a deep breath. "Don't shoot him in the head," I said, my voice steady. "It's too quick." Dante's lips curled into a dark, terrifying smile. Bang! The screen goes black. 1 month later, the air in the garden smelled of lavender and damp earth. Spring had finally come to Chicago, melting the gray snow and revealing the green life hidden beneath. I sat on a stone bench, a sketchbook on my lap. Charcoal stained my fingers. I was drawing the fountain, capturing the way the water danced in the sunlight. I looked down at myself. I was wearing a dress. It was white, but it wasn't stiff lace or heavy satin. It was white silk, soft and flowing, moving with the breeze. It didn't feel like a costume. It felt like me. I closed my eyes and let the sun warm my face. Dante hadn't killed my father. That gunshot in the warehouse? He had shot the duffel bag. The bullet had ripped through the fabric and shredded the bundles of cash inside. Confetti made of $100 bills had rained down on my father's sobbing form. Then, Dante had leaned down and whispered the sentence, "Exile." My father was put on a bus to nowhere. No money, no ID, no phone, no contacts. For a man addicted to the high life, addicted to gambling. Poverty was a fate far worse than a bullet. He was alive, but he was a ghost, and he could never, ever come back. I heard footsteps on the gravel path behind me. Heavy, deliberate. I didn't flinch. I didn't turn around. I knew that walk. Dante stopped behind the bench. He didn't speak. He placed his hands on my shoulders. His touch was warm, heavy, grounding. "It is a good drawing," he murmured, his voice rumbling against my back. "It's messy," I said. leaning my head back against his stomach. Life is messy, Elena. He moved his hands down my arms, tracing the skin until his fingers interlaced with mine. He had changed. The darkness was still there. It would always be there. But the ice had thawed. He wasn't just a warlord anymore. He was a man who had found something worth keeping. But he was still Dante. He was still the king of Chicago. And kings don't ask. They take. He stepped around the bench and stood in front of me, blocking the sun. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, black velvet box. My heart skipped a beat. He opened it. Inside sat a ring. It wasn't a traditional white diamond. It was a black diamond, huge and flawless, set in platinum. It absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. Dark, beautiful, dangerous, just like him. He didn't kneel. Dante Moretti knelt for no one, except that one time in the warehouse. For me. He took the ring out and held it. The debt is cleared, he said. Frankie is gone. The Vitti family is crushed. Your father is gone. You are free, Elena. He looked me in the eye. You can walk out that gate right now. I will give you money. I will give you a new identity. You can go to Paris, go to art school, do whatever you dreamed of. My breath caught in my throat. Freedom. It was what I'd wanted since the beginning. Or, he continued, his voice dropping an octave, you stay. You stay with the monster. You take his name. You take his ring. You take his world. He took my hand, hovering the ring over my finger. But know this, if you take this ring, there is no going back. I am a selfish man, Elena. If you stay, I will never let you go. You will be mine until the day I die. I looked at the gate in the distance. It was open. Then I looked at him. I looked at the scars I knew were hidden under his shirt. I looked at the hands that had killed for me. I looked at the eyes that saw me not as a debt, but as a queen. Freedom wasn't about being alone. Freedom was about choosing your own chains. I reached out and steadied his hand. I pushed my finger through the ring. It slid on perfectly. I don't want Paris, I whispered, standing up to meet him. I want the monster. Dante let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for a lifetime. He wrapped his arms around my waist and pulled me flush against him. You are mine, he growled. And you are mine, I replied. He kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was searing, possessive, a promise of forever written in fire. I looked over his shoulder, straight into the camera lens, breaking the fourth wall one last time. My wedding started with blood and tears, I said, my voice strong and unwavering. I was sold to pay a debt, but in the end, I didn't pay with money. I paid with my heart, and I profited the whole world. And that, my dear friends, is the story of Elena and Dante. We have walked through fire, snow, and blood together. Thank you for listening until the very last second. If this story made your heart race, if you fell in love with the darkness, please subscribe to the channel right now. I have a new dark romance masterpiece brewing, even darker and more intense than this one. You don't want to miss it. Goodbye for now, and remember, sometimes the safest place is in the arms of the devil.